Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Saba Show, and today we are doing a little bit of a trade free agency summary, and I'll just share my thoughts on basically what everyone got, what everyone lost. Basically an overall outlook on each team and how they fared in the trade period. But make sure to drop a like on the show if you do enjoy this format, and subscribe if you want to see more sports content. We're going to be putting out a lot of stuff in the coming weeks, especially with the NBA coming out. So very excited for that. But anyway, without further ado, let's dive right in. As you can see, this is what it's going to look like for the video. We'll start things off with the Crows. They got Jordan Dawson and 3 picks in exchange for Jake Culley, pick 62, 66, and a future 4th rounder. And look, I think Jordan Dawson is a huge coup for the Crows. They didn't really have to give too much up. I think they used a pick that they acquired in the multi-team swap in order to get Dawson. Swans weren't happy about it. They think they were snubbed, but I think it was a fair deal. The Crows, look, they've gotten a few picks in as well. Jake Culley wasn't getting too much time, or was probably prone to being a fringe player for the coming years, especially with Jordan Butts and Tom Doedee cementing their spots in the best 22. So I think it was pretty sensible to just let him walk. But yeah, Jordan Dawson is going to, supply them with a lot of run off halfback. A beautiful kick of the footy. He'll kick, I reckon 5 to 10 goals this season purely off getting handballs from 50 out and then just launching an absolute dart. So I think this is a great signing for the Crows, and they were able to strengthen their draft hand a little. So very good period by the Crows. We moved to Brisbane, and they only did one deal, and Darcy Fort was the major headline of that deal. Darcy Fort and pick 41 coming in for pick 50 and a future 3rd rounder. And look, I think, the Lions, they moved up in this year's draft. They didn't have to give up too much in the coming years. Look, I think he's going to be, he's not going to play a huge role, but I think he's going to provide a lot of insurance in terms of, waiting for Hipwood to come back from his injury. It has been reported that his return has been fast-tracked. Looks on track to come back much earlier than expected. So Fort services probably aren't needed, but he will provide a bit of backup, especially if McInerney gets injured for like a week or two with those dodgy ankles of his. And Carlton were probably one of the teams that, decided to go for player acquisitions over picks. They brought in Lewis Young, Adam Chera, and George Hewitt. Out went Sam Petrevski-Seton, pick 6, and then a future 3rd rounder. Look, they got fairly snubbed in terms of getting only pick 52 for Sam Petrevski-Seton, but that turned into Lewis Young, so they made the most out of a bad situation. Lewis Young will fill a team need, as their tall stocks have had problems in recent years. Sam Petrevski-Seton was not going to get opportunities at the Blues, especially with the acquisitions of Chera and Hewitt. They both fill a team need that is two-way running and a good kick of the football. George Hewitt can also tag, he's versatile, and Adam Chera is going to add, I think, what the Blues have been missing in the midfield. So, I think this has been a fairly good trade period for the Blues. Pick 6, that was always going to be given up for Adam Chera, but the fact they only had to give up a future 3rd on top is an example of the Blues playing, harder ball. They weren't stubborn, but in saying that, I think they were fairly reasonable with what they ended up giving up and receiving, ultimately. Collingwood went absolutely nuts in this trade period. They got a lot of picks. Pat Lipinski and Nathan Kruger also came to the club, along with some picks for the future. So I think this was a great window by the Magpies. They've strengthened their draft hand. You can find a couple gems between pick 40 and 60. It's rare, but you can find them. It is possible, and they've got a few picks in that area now. Pat Lipinski, they didn't have to part with too much to get him in, and he hasn't been playing in his natural position. So I think this is a great get, because you can really see what he can do, especially with, the likes of Pendlebury and Sidebottom getting older. So I think that's a really sensible pick. Obviously, we forget about Darcy Moore, so he'll be coming back, but Nathan Kruger will probably push the likes of Jack Madgen and whatnot out of the side. He'll also provide a bit of depth because, Chris Mayne has also left the club, and he was, he had found a home down back. So I think this is another sensible signing. He's young, you didn't really put much on the line to get him in. So I think this is a great window. Look at all the picks they've been able to acquire. Essendon, very quiet window. And, I think some Bombers fans will be pretty disappointed that they weren't a little bit more active. They got Jake Kelly in, who I think will have a role in this Bombers team, especially with the loss of Cale Hooker. Obviously, Peter Wright's going to have a bigger role, but that may allow Laverde or James Stewart to push forward, and Jake Kelly can go back. So there's a bit of flexibility allowed with bringing Jake Kelly in, but, I can't help but think they could have done a bit better, maybe been a little bit more ambitious in terms of getting Bobby Hill, but overall, look, you can't really say much about what the Bombers did this trade period. And Fremantle were probably another big winner of the trade period. They were able to bring in Jordan Clark and Will Brodie, as well as strengthening their draft hand up top, and then a couple of future picks. Obviously, they had to part with a few of those, as well as Adam Chera, to get all these deals done. I do like what they did in order to move up the draft. They had to give up a future pick, and pick 27 for pick 22 ultimately became Jordan Clark. I think they did really, really well. Obviously, Adam Chera, it's going to be hard to fill that gap. Finished in the top 5 in the BNF this year, but, you're bringing in 2 midfielders or 2 players that have been really unproven at their first clubs. So here's an opportunity for these young guys. They're hitting their prime just about now, or they're just before that. So there's a bit of time to work out, where their position lies in the league. I think they could really complement the likes of Sarong and Brayshaw. Brodie's a bit more of an inside mid. Jordan Clark can play wing. Also played halfback as, in the championships before, I believe, he got drafted. So, yeah, really good job by Fremantle. And, they've got pick 6 and 19 there as well. So they can also strengthen, probably maybe another tall forward or something like that, higher up in the draft, because obviously they've gotten those guys in much lower draft positions. So, they've got a lot of options. We moved to Gold Coast, and look, they got rid of a lot of draft value for this season. Obviously looking forward to the future, probably not seeing too much value in this draft, even though there are some good players. But they were able to get Marbior Chol in, who will fill a need. Obviously, we've forgotten about Jared Witts. He was out for the majority of the season, and Chris Burgess was playing ruck. So if a situation like that happens again, Marbior Chol is a much more seasoned ruck, has a bit more experience there. He'll be able to fill the void. And obviously, they got him for nothing. So added bonus there. Look, Will Brodie probably deserved a chance. But then again, you've got a pretty decent engine room at Gold Coast. Hugh Greenwood, he's out for a while. But then you got Took Miller. Fiorini just came back into the side for the last month and did a good job. So, look, I don't think there was a place for Will Brodie. Suns are preparing more so for the future. But yeah, I think this was, a pretty sensible draft, has a few positives, has a few negatives. GWS, one of, the very subtle teams in this trade period, and you wouldn't be happy if you're a GWS fan. The only deal you did, you probably got snubbed. Jeremy Finlayson out for a future third. That'll be like pick 40 at best. And Finlayson can kick a bag every so often. So you're not getting a lot in return. GWS have, they need something to get to the upper echelon and compete for a premiership, but, they didn't really do anything to help that cause. They got a future third in. So, look, I'd be pretty disappointed if I was a GWS fan. Geelong continued to make no sense. They got rid of some of the younger guys and brought in someone older, So it's very clear that they are just sticking to what they are good at, maintaining the retirement home, bringing in individuals that are in the latter stages of their career. They did, strengthen their draft hand this year. They got a few picks in, but at the cost of these younger players. John Segler will fill a need though. They can't seem to work out the ruck situation there with Reece Stanley and Radaglia. So I think Segler will help, steady it a little, stabilize it a little. But yeah, removing Jordan Clark, Darcy Fort and Kruger on top of the delistings. Charlie Constable is one name that comes to mind. Look, yeah, I can't see what the hell the Cats are doing. If they think this is going to make a significant change in contending for a premiership, I don't think it's going to happen. The Hawks, we just talked about Jonathan Segler, who went out the door, but they were able to replace him with Max Lynch. Also, they didn't really lose too much in terms of draft picks, but they did lose Tim O'Brien as well, who had solidified a good role down back. But yeah, he's gone for free. Look, I think Max Lynch, it's very clear that the age profile, they want to go younger. They weren't able to get rid of some of their players that have been in the rumour mill. Wingard was one of those names. Gunston, he's been in a lot of talks, but obviously teams don't want him because he can't stay out of injury trouble. So, look, I think if these players stay fit, I think they're going to be... the Hawks will be a much better side. We saw what they could do in the latter stages of the year. So, Max Lynch also has shown glimpses. That Max Gawn matchup earlier in the year, he stood up well for a half, and then the inexperience took over. But, the signs are there, and I think this is a good signing for the Hawks. The D's, even despite their premiership, decided to strengthen their draft hand. They did have to get rid of a future first in order to get these 3 picks in. But look, I think it's fairly sensible. They've shown proof that they can draft well, and they've found some gems. I think Trent Rivers is probably the most notable name. James Jordan as well. In the range of these picks they've gotten in the trade period. They also got Luke Dunstan in, who probably won't get a role in the best 22. Much like his situation at St Kilda, which I don't think he wants. But then again, he probably should expect this, given he's gone to a premiership side, and it's going to be hard to break in. North bring in Callum Coleman-Jones, and I think this is going to be a great pick for them. Richmond, he played well there, kicked a couple bags, shown his threat. He'll be able to play ruck as well. I guess release the burden a little for Todd Goldstein, who is tracking on the, I think, mid stages of his 30s, 33, around that range. But yeah, they were able to strengthen their draft hand a little bit. Actually, no, they went down, but look, they've brought in this nice young key forward. They did lose Robbie Tarrant, which you could be considered a big loss a couple of years ago, but I believe they do have the reinforcements. It's probably the right decision, just to, I guess, align with all these young guys on the Kangaroos. But yeah, I think getting rid of Tarrant was probably a good idea. We saw the up-and-coming likes of Ben Mackay in recent years, really take that spot. So I think this is fairly sensible on North's behalf. And then Port Adelaide, they decided to move up in the draft in order to get rid of Peter Laddams, which makes a lot of sense. Peter Laddams, is a ruck forward. He's got the versatility, and that's, probably why they demanded a bit. I don't know if this is a good dropping, if that makes sense. I guess you can say it's cancelled out by the fact that they got him Finlayson for very, very cheap. But in saying that, yeah, Laddams, he's a very versatile player, but then again, Port have a lot of players that fit that mould, Dixon, Marshall, Georgiades, and so on, including Lysette as well. So yeah, I don't think Laddams would have gotten much opportunity, barring injuries. So yeah, I think it was pretty sensible to get rid, and they sort of made the most out of the situation by moving up in the draft, and we've seen the success Port have had with Butters, Rosie, and Dersma. Richmond, they moved up in the draft as well this year. Also were able to acquire a future second. Obviously had to part with some of the younger guys in order for that to happen. But this is ultimately sensible. I think Robbie Tarrant's going to have more of a role than Mubby or Chollen Coleman-Jones. Obviously, Nankervis is going to be first ruck any day, and Coleman-Jones is going to sit behind Tom Lynch and Jack Rewald, unless we have another injury bug at Richmond like we did the season just gone. So I think Robbie Tarrant will play a bit of a bigger role. Richmond have been renowned for their absolute gun defenders, and Robbie Tarrant is no exception. Very underrated around the league, I believe. So, look, I think this is a great signing for the Tigers. And yeah, ultimate goal for Robbie Tarrant is to win a flag. If you're a Saints supporter, you're going to be disappointed about this trade window as well. Bought in absolutely no one. basically dropped down in the draft and lost Luke Dunstan for absolutely nothing. So not great, and I think Luke Dunstan had some really good games. I mean, we saw he got 11 Brownlow votes. So I don't know if, I mean, the Brownlow's a bit misleading. You get 30 possessions, you're probably going to get votes, no matter how high efficiency they are. So, look, I think the Dunstan loss isn't going to be felt too much, but if they get some injuries in the midfield, there could be problems there. Yeah, I don't know what the Saints are doing. The Swans, well, yeah, future first, they were able to bring in for Jordan Dawson. That'll, I mean, will it come into handy next year? Probably going to be used as trade fodder because it's going to fall down the very back end of the first round with the D's owning that pick. Peter Laddams coming into the club. Don't know what his role is there because obviously their forward stocks are fine. And, you know, Tom Hickey is the better ruckman. So I don't know what Laddams is going to Sydney for, but he'll find out the hard way if he can't get a spot. Regardless, pick 16. I mean, they didn't have to drop down too far in order to get Laddams, which is, I mean, time will tell as to whether this deal was a success or not. Obviously, he had to part with George Hewitt and Jordan Dawson. Jordan Dawson's loss will probably be felt a fair bit. But then again, you've got the likes of Braden Campbell sitting in the wings who is ready to get his opportunity. Great kick on him. So I think they'll be similar players. Braden Campbell will probably replace Jordan Dawson very, very nicely. And West Coast, very quiet window, but one of, you know, I think the big buys of the trade period. There wasn't too many of them, but Sam Petrevski-Seton comes to the club for pick 52. Didn't have to pay much for him. And that's why I like this, because it's a really low risk, high reward type deal. Don't know where he's going to slot in because the West Coast midfield is deep. Can only see him playing halfback. I mean, the Eagles got Witherden in last season to fill the halfback void. Sam Petrevski-Seton could fill that role. Shannon Hearn is a bit prone to injury, so he could be in that position when he goes down. But ultimately, I think this is a smart move, because if, you know, Petrevski-Seton finds form, they could be on with one of the steals of the trade period 2021. And the last team we've got on here, Tim O'Brien goes to the Bulldogs. You know, the Bulldogs, they went nuts with getting picks in. We did say that within the 40 to 60 range, you can find some steals, and the Dogs were able to acquire 4 of those selections. Also pick 23 as well. Did have to part with pick 17, but I think, you know, with those picks, you know, in between 20 and 50, they'll be willing to make that sacrifice. Obviously, to part with Louis Young, he wasn't going to get a game, but, you know, at times you think maybe not the right move. Lewis Young obviously wanted to go, but in saying that, Steph Martin is damn old, and, you know, we've seen how the Dogs play better with Tim English playing forward. So Jordan Sweet, obviously, you know, has been given the opportunity with the new contract. So, yeah, they've given faith in him. Pat Lipinski going, you know, maybe he could become something great. But, yeah, there's no way he was getting in that Dogs midfield. So, fair move there. Probably didn't get enough for him, but it is what it is. And ultimately, I think, Tim O'Brien could become similar to Josh Shackey in being able to, you know, serve up forward and down back as a utility. But obviously, I think they signed him for backline purposes. So he'll be able to fill the void either end. We've seen him be able to do both. Probably up forward in a less competent capacity, but in saying that, a decent signing nonetheless for absolutely nothing. And that is it from me. I hope you enjoyed this video once again. Make sure to drop a like on the show and subscribe to the channel for more sports content. That's basically going to be it. Share your thoughts in the comments as well about your favorite team and how they did, and your thoughts on all that. I will respond to it. Anyway, thanks once again for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And yeah, that'll be it from me. Peace out.